I bet. Okay, so let's kick this off properly. Um, in the news recently, the hottest topic I've been hearing about, of course, you're hearing about, the U.S. pulling out of Afghanistan and the Taliban stretching out resurgence of the Taliban and them securing the territory that they might have lost and taking control of that country. The other main important thing that I've been hearing about is this infrastructure bill that's been, I guess, drafted or written up by Joe Biden's party, by the Democratic Party, by the U.S. government. I'm not sure exactly who. It's something that just because it's everywhere, it's very important, and I hardly understand it. So this is something that I remember you've spoken to me about in the past. It ties into some of our conversations that we've had previously. It ties into some conversations that we've had previously, and I just wanted to get your opinion and just get a basic understanding under my belt of what this infrastructure bill is about. So I've done some research about it, and just based on the research I've done, I found an excellent website that gave me a very concise summation of the main points of the bill, and I'll post that link to that website a little bit later. But my understanding is that this bill has two parts, and one part that costs $1 trillion, and there's another part that costs $3.5 trillion. And if we look at the cheaper one, if you want to call it that one, the cheaper one, that one is basically an infrastructure bill, and it deals with the physical infrastructure of the United States. So first of all, just getting down to the basic bare essentials, what is an infrastructure? What is that? What does that term even mean?
Well, first of all, I'm William D. Frazier,
Oh,
Black American,
okay.
Black American
Okay, go ahead,
entrepreneur
go ahead.
and connecting industry and cultural differences. Based here in Shanghai. I've been in China since 2002. Worked in import-export, manufacturing, product sourcing, content writing. Pretty much done a lot of things over here in China for 2 decades now. Um, the infrastructure bill. You're looking at two components of this bill. I believe it's part of Biden's Build Back Better agenda.
Yeah.
Want to build back America, make it better. And they're looking at the human aspect of it, and they're looking at the infrastructure aspect of it. So that's the whole package that they're looking at. If you ask specifically about the infrastructure, you're talking about, building up the roads, building up the broadband, internet services, and building up the bridges, and basically just trying to repair the infrastructure in the U.S. that's been neglected for so many decades it's hindering growth and development. But then you got the other component, which was the human aspect of when you're talking about tax credit, which is partly built in. Like tax credits, reduction in pharmaceutical products, housing, healthcare, as well as free college tuition for local community colleges. They saying, okay, that's part, that's going to really benefit Black Americans, period. But
Mhm.
it is not exclusively designed to benefit Black Americans. It's designed to benefit Americans as a whole. So that's not going to be set aside and say, okay, only Black Americans get free community college tuition. Only Black Americans can have reduction in housing costs, or only Black Americans qualify for affordable housing or expanded employment benefits. No, it's not going to say that, but yet, Black Americans benefit from it. Now, but when you come down to the infrastructure part, how does Black America benefit from that? And I think that's one of the key parts of this conversation that we're going to really hammer in. How do we deal with that? Because that is, from my understanding, it's like maybe 8 or 10 year investment project.
Mhm.
So that's where a lot of money is going to go into trying to to build back, and how does Black America benefit from that?
All right. So my understanding, thanks for sharing that with us. My understanding of this whole term "build back" is that we want to go back to what America was doing pre-pandemic levels, because apparently the infrastructure has deteriorated a lot more because of COVID-19. So he wants to go that he wants to go back to there and then raise it up to where it should have been, even before pandemic levels. So I just wanted to run down. I got this website right here, and I wanted to very quickly look at the different aspects of the human infrastructure bill, where Joe Biden's saying, I'm going to invest in the people of the United States, and then second to that, talk about how and why would that specifically, how did that specifically affect Black Americans? So the first one he has is Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions, Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, Committee on Energy and Natural Resources, Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry, Committee on the Judiciary, Committee on Commerce, Science, and Technology, Committee on Environment and Public Works, Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs, Committee on Small Business and Entrepreneurship, Committee on Indian Affairs for Health, Education, and Housing Programs for Native Americans, and lastly, Committee on Veterans Affairs for upgrades to VA facilities. Now, these are listed in order based on how much they cost. So the most expensive ones would be at the top, investing in like science and technology, and the cheapest ones would be at the bottom, like investing in Veterans Affairs. So how do you think this will impact specifically African Americans?
Well, I mean, we said committee, that's just people getting together trying to determine how it's going to benefit Black America. I'm just group of people getting together discussing the policies and the procedures and how they're going to basically oversight, how they're going to ensure that Black Americans benefit from them. Let's look at, you list a lot of committees there, but let's just look at which one you want to just talk about in general. You said the one, what's the top one again?
The top one, and it tells you like Committee on Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions. And there's going to be an investment in historically Black colleges, tribal colleges. They talk about different kinds of academic institutions that they're going to be investing in. And it says it increases the Pell Grant Award, and it invests in school infrastructure. Yeah, and also it invests in. Which one thing you told me before is one reason why families can't get back to work is because they can't afford childcare.
But see, all that is built in. That is not necessarily targeting Black Americans. All that's built in. That's built into they just hope that Black Americans can benefit from it. It doesn't necessarily say that we will, because it's just generalizing. Okay, I mean, you're saying that with the child care, the health care, investment in education, expansion of Pell Grant, that is just, okay, yes, Black Americans need those things, but they're just not specifically geared towards us only. You know, what set-asides do they have specifically for Black America during this infrastructure bill?
Do they have any at all? Because other than mentioning HBCUs, I don't see anything that specifically is targeting us in our group of people.
That is the area that is really the one. You're right. That's the part that's really not being discussed on how we could benefit from the infrastructure bill. Now, let's look at it in this context. A lot of these projects are going to be awarded through contracts, either going to be federal, state, or local contracts.
Right.
Now, what in your mind, or in all the listeners here, who do you know that a Black-owned business owner that is capable of building a bridge, or building a railroad, or building a highway, or laying a broadband network? Do you know any one of us in our community that has a company that does that type of work?
It seems like not as far as individual workers, yeah, but a company, someone.
Right.
I don't have those stats on hand, but I would imagine it's very few. I don't think there are a lot, if any.
It couldn't be a lot, right? So that's where the bulk of the money for the infrastructure is going to go towards. Only thing they're telling about Black America, what we're going to benefit from it is job creation.
Right.
That's what they're talking about, creating jobs. So therefore, they're looking at us to be the laborers. They're not looking at us to be the prime contractors on these projects.
if you, well, what am I trying to ask? Is there any, if you're not a contractor, is there any guarantee that you're going to get the jobs that are generated from this program?
Well, from what Biden is saying, that if it's a federal contractor, they have to give
Mm-hmm.
people $15 an hour minimum wage. Remember,
Okay.
initially during his campaign run, he was saying that they're going to raise the minimum wage from $7.25 to $15 an hour. What
Okay.
happened to that conversation? That is kind of like just like faded away. They're not talking about raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour anymore. So now, as part of the infrastructure bill, they're saying that for federal contracts, not state and local, but for federal
Mm-hmm.
contracts, they must have a minimum wage of $15 an hour. Now look at, this is a very unique thing that you got to look at the comparison. It's kind of ironic that all of a sudden the war in Afghanistan has ended. And what you're going to start hearing is that a lot of those contractors made billions and billions of dollars off of those contracts in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
but yet and still, there was nothing that benefited the country itself. So where did all those billions and billions of dollars go? Did they build roads in Afghanistan? Did they build bridges? Did they build broadband networks? Did they build residential communities in Afghanistan? What type of contract do those prime contractors had that would allow them to do billions and billions of dollars for over 20 years?
The way I would answer that question from the little bit that I do know is that what they did build there, they did build some things, but given the amount of time they had, they should have built more. And it kind of makes sense they didn't build as much as they could have because there was a war going on, and whatever they built might have been destroyed.
But that's trillions of dollars that they invested over 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Still no result. But what I'm getting at is you have prime contractors that are already set up to benefit from the infrastructure bill.
Okay, so the contractors that have already come from Afghanistan, they're going to come back to the United States, and they're probably going to be the main beneficiaries of these government contracts.
I'm not saying just the ones that is in Afghanistan. You don't have main contractors in the U.S. that's already geared towards to make those bills type of contract. Look at a military base, U.S. military base. It's basically a city within a city, right?
Yeah.
They have a lot of roads, bridges, and things like that. And most of those things are contracted out to prime contractors to do those projects on those military bases. So that's a pool of individual, pool of companies right there that's already in the system that has the resources and the capability of doing those contracts. Also, one thing about government contracts is normally they have like a 30 or 60-day pay period after completion of work. How many black-owned business you know that could wait 30 or 60 days after completing the job that can get paid?
So they don't have that much reserve cash on hand.
Exactly. So the infrastructure bill sounds good technically on paper, but when you start breaking it down, looking at what impact it's going to have on Black Americans, we got to look at what is going to be our role in bidding on those contracts, and how can the government make sure that we have an opportunity not only to bid on those contracts, but to be awarded those contracts. What kind of security, what kind of mechanism that they have in place for that?
You tell me. I don't know. This conversation is like pretty heavy for me. What mechanism is in place, if anything at all, to make sure that a certain amount of these contracts go to African American contractors? And this is something we touched on before as well. Even if black businesses do get those contracts, like you said, do they have the amount of reserve capital on hand? Do they have? There are people who can do these jobs, who can execute these building projects, but what am I saying? Is the know-how is there, but what else is missing? Even if a certain amount of black businesses do get hired, what's missing? What
is missing is that what has happened. It's a lot that is missing. To be honest with you, it's a lot that is missing. One thing, key component that's missing is that when we get an opportunity to bid on these contracts, and which ones do we have the opportunity to do bid on? I mean, you look at infrastructure, you talk about building and utility, you talk about transportation, you talk about a lot of electrical vehicles incentives. You're talking about roads and bridges, eliminating lead pipes. Because what is Detroit? or was that? Oh no,
Mm-hmm.
Flint, Michigan,
Flint,
right?
Michigan. Yeah, that
Flint, Michigan, right?
Michigan's one of the worst places for infrastructure. Yeah.
Electrical grid, high speed broadband. You know what black businesses have this capability to bid on these types of contracts. Not very many of us have these resources to do that. So what
Mm-hmm.
has to happen? What they're talking about doing is something that would probably get a lawsuit against. For example, when Trump was president, you remember the tariffs came in on the Trump administration, which is still implemented under the Biden administration. Okay. One of the things that Trump said that he wanted to do with the tariffs, that was the money that was collected under the tariffs, he was going to give it to the farmers who had lost because of the trade deal
Right.
between China and the United States. He was going to get billions
Right.
and billions to
Right.
the
Yes,
farmers,
I remember
right?
that vaguely. Yeah.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
recently, you can look this up. Recently, Biden administration wanted to give black farmers $1.6 billion, if I'm not mistaken. We
Mm-hmm.
had this white group in Wisconsin, this white farmers organization in Wisconsin, that filed a lawsuit to prevent black farmers from getting that money.
The name of the organization is called Will. I did look this up. Let me give me 1 second. I'm gonna tell you what Will stands for. And what they're saying is like, and this is what I'm also like I was confused about. What is a specific grievance that you can say, okay, this has been done disproportionately and it has negatively impacted black farmers? And they were saying there was something from like the 80s or 90s or something that's fairly recently. And then so black farmers should be forgiven of repayment of certain debts because something impacted them negatively. And so, well, Wisconsin. Okay, give me 1 second. But yeah, so what the argument of these white farmers was saying that, okay, you're giving black farmers tax breaks, debt relief, and it's just like specifically for what? Can you have, just me playing devil's advocate, do you have specifically a grievance or something that was done that disaffected them in particular because they're black? Right. And that was their argument.
And because of that, the funds was held up. So
I think they won, in fact, didn't they?
They won it, but I don't know the federal judge released the funds. I don't know that lawsuit was thrown out or not. But when it happened, it kind of indicated that those individuals are waiting to say, okay, let's see what they're gonna give black folks, and then let's file a lawsuit against it, and they just hold it up in the federal court. I mean, if you hold it up in court, you cannot get those funds.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot.
Yeah.
So, but companies that have financial resources can actually get those funds to bid on those contracts.
Okay.
So that, in a sense, eliminates black business owners from even being a prime contractor on some of those major contracts. So what they're looking at, is they have this organization called the Minority Supply, let's get the name right. The Minority Business Development Agency. Mm-hmm. What they were started doing the Nixon administration back in '72, and their job was to look at and be an advocate for small minority businesses to get contracts. And within this infrastructure bill, they are now supposed to become a part of the a certain department they're supposed to be part of as a permanent federal office. They're supposed to be a part of it. And their responsibility is going to be like looking at how can they guarantee that black-owned businesses could be a part of these contracts. Now, keep in mind that it's not saying that there's going to be law. They're just going to look into seeing how it could be done. And if they're saying that, okay, we're just going to take some of these major contracts, so the big contracts, anybody know about contracts, if you're the prime contractor, you're responsible for the whole project itself, whatever component that's involved in building the project. So one thing I utilize is when you're looking at a general contract, when you're building a house, a general contractor is responsible for the whole construction of your house. If you ever had a house built, you understand what I'm talking about. You know, you have people that are doing the roofing, doing the plumbing, doing the electrical work, doing the walls, doing the foundation, so forth and so on, installing the windows, the doors, the cabinets, whatever. So the general contractor is responsible for the building of this house. And what they do They go out and they subcontract certain components of that house project to other individuals to do, which is the subcontract,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah.
So what Biden administration is, or in this minority supply development organization is suggesting, instead of giving the general contract the house project, let's just break up the house project into different contracts, thereby bypassing the possibility of the general contractor making everybody else subcontractors. So in essence, me as a Black-owned business person, I could be the prime contractor for just the roof contract itself.
Right.
Instead of being the
Which would benefit Black businesses a lot more, because you wouldn't have to be a subcontractor. You could be a primary contractor. You could actually bid and get a contract that would help you make money.
Exactly. So that's the push that they're trying to do. But back to this Wisconsin group, they're concerned, not Wisconsin group, but this organization is concerned that issue that happened with the Black farmers will come back up again, because basically we're saying we're going to set aside these contracts exclusively for Black contractors.
I'm looking at it right now. It's Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty. They're the one that filed a lawsuit challenge. I think they were a group of white farmers, 12 white farmers, and I think some of them don't even live in Wisconsin. But that was their grievance. They were saying that you're giving debt relief, debt breaks to Black farmers, but it's just like, for what though? And this is my question that was popping in my head right now is, what is it specifically, if you had to pinpoint one thing, or if you had to put a label on this, what is it that hinders Black business people in the United States from being able to secure the contracts, the kinds of contracts that primary contractors secure? What specifically, if you had to put a name or a label to it, what is it that's stopping us from being on the same level as white contractors?
Systematic racism, systematic economic inequality. I mean, those things are already still in existence. You know, it's pretty much preventing us from having access to certain part of business development and within the U.S. However, I think what you're asking me is, how can we get beyond those aspects, that particular part of being a contractor?
Right.
One thing that I feel that we lack is direct access to not only to capital, right? Is that we lack direct access to the equipment and the supplies that are going to be needed to bid on these contracts, or to be able to do the work for these type of contracts. There's only one country that I know from the last 20 years of me actually being here, are witnessing it, and it's going further back 30, 40 years ago. China is the only country right now that has demonstrated over and over again, not only within its own country, but in other countries, such as in the Middle East, as well as in Africa, that they have the capability of developing infrastructure projects, which would indicate, which would tell me, if they have the capability of developing infrastructure projects very successfully, therefore they must have access to the equipment and supplies in order to do those infrastructure projects.
So the infrastructure that China is building all over the world, and especially in developing countries, is it, how do you say, infrastructure is going to last and still be there 20 or 30 years from now?
Well, you're talking about roads, you're talking about bridges, you're talking about dams, you're talking about ports, you know, you're talking about housing projects. I'm quite sure they're going to be here longer than 20 or 30 years. I mean, you've been in Shanghai in 2006. When you were here in 2006, the tallest building was Jinmao Tower, if I'm not mistaken. The Shanghai Financial Center hasn't been built yet. The Shanghai Museum building hasn't been built yet. You got 3 tall buildings in Shanghai right now since your time here. Shanghai only had 4 metro lines when I came in 2002. Now it's up to 18. You know,
So looking at this connection between China and Black America, let's say if Black Americans who are in business, who are in construction, who do want to secure these infrastructure contracts. So what needs to happen from what you're saying is that they can secure the materials that they need from China. Yeah. How does that change the situation? How does that benefit us in the United States?
If you're not don't have direct access to the equipment and supplies to make you more cost competitive, that means that you have to buy the goods from somebody else, a distributor probably within the U.S., which a distributor probably bought it from someone else. And by the time, you know how it is, by the time you buy something from somebody that bought it from someone else, if the price goes up, the price goes up. So you're automatically eliminated because you're not price competitive. You know, that's you know, my previous background before I came over, I worked in government contracts. I did it for DOD as part of the MWR program. I also did it at worked for the Topeka Purchasing Center, which is responsible for the purchasing of postal equipment and automation equipment for the post office. I did it for the city of Richmond. So Richmond, Virginia. So I understand the contracting process. And two things that our contracting office, what you look at, one of the main two things you look at price and you look at service.
Equipment. Okay.
One of those don't cut the mustard, you don't get the contract. You don't get the contract. So how it benefits Black America is that if we have those contracts, if they have direct access to the equipment and to the supplies, so they can become more competitive on these bid opportunities, then there's still a better chance of getting awarded these contracts. And that's the missing component. That's one of the key missing components of getting around all this, what we call it, what we use, systematic racism.
Racism.
Yeah.
Right.
When it comes down to
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So having that, yeah. Okay. Is there, all right. So the one thing I wanted to ask, are there any criticisms of the infrastructure bill that you know of right now? Like looking at the big picture, the whole thing in general, because of course, you know, the states have to vote on it. There are some states that voted yes for it and some states that voted no against it. It seems like it's something that the Democrats are pushing. Both houses, I'm not sure as of today, but both houses have not fully passed this infrastructure bill. Are there any criticisms of the bill that you can talk about or name?
Well, for my criticisms that most people are going to talk about, it costs too much.
It's too expensive. But with that said, you know, the U.S. prints money. We just make money. So is there any such thing as something that's too expensive? You can just make the money?
But, you know, right now with the U.S., it's all about what you're jockeying for. How can I position myself to benefit from it so I could get reelected the next term? Or how can I prevent it from happening so I can get reelected next time? One of the things that is probably inhibiting this thing from actually moving forward is the tariffs.
The tariffs.
The tariff bill, tariff act that's in place right now that Trump implemented and Biden pretty much, you know, still got it in place.
Accepted it, carried it on.
Doesn't tend to remove it. You even got big companies. I mean, the big companies are crying, telling him to remove those tariffs because it's causing an economic impact on their bottom line. Just imagine.
So,
go ahead.
So just to make sure I understand what you're saying, a tariff is an extra, like a tax or an extra amount of money that they tack onto imported goods.
Yes.
For example, what goods imported that have this tariff tacked onto them? What are some examples of these kinds of goods?
Oh, probably your shirt you got on, probably the chair you're sitting on, probably
everything.
I mean, it's Section 301. You can look it up. They got a whole list of items that have extra duty taxes on them that's coming into the United States from China. You know, it's a lot.
So specifically from China. So the tariffs specifically on goods coming from China.
Not only China, but have Section 202 has an effect on the UK. But the UK is dealing with cars and all kinds of components.
Yeah, higher quality goods.
Right.
What is the purpose?
Too, but China got a lot. China taking a bigger hit.
What is the purpose of even implementing this tariffs? I mean, it helps to grow the economy, but at the same time, if businesses are suffering because this tariff exists, why even have it?
It was like trying to make the economic impact on China more harder. You know, trying to make China more
Trade war.
Trade war, basically saying, okay, we're gonna punish China by having a tariff against their goods. But in actuality, it does not have an effect on China because
It
the
hurts
goods are
American
still
business
imported.
people.
It's affecting American people, and big companies already know this. You know, the
Mm-hmm.
importers are paying more on the imports of their goods, and if they're paying more on their imports of goods, that means they're going to raise their prices, which means that the consumers are going to pay more.
They pass it on to the consumer.
Still, they haven't even increased the minimum wage, so you're paying more for items with less money. You know,
Mm-hmm.
losing
Yeah.
more money. You know, so and that's a big impact. And then now you got COVID that has come on top of this. And what COVID has done with the impact of that, I mean, you got congestions at some major ports around the world, particularly in the US. You have some congestions over here in China too. But when you have that impact of COVID and people not being able to go to work on those ports to unload and load those containers, that's a backup.
Ah, okay. So COVID is what's causing the congestions at these ports. People not going to work, people not unloading the cargo from the ships.
Exactly.
Okay. The tariffs that you just mentioned, do they stand a chance of ever being lifted anytime in the near future? What has to happen for those tariffs to be eliminated?
That's a very good question. They have a great possibility of being removed. But what I'm looking at, what I'm concerned about, what I'm observing is once they pass this Build Back Better bill, whatever how you want to call it.
Right. Yeah, the second part.
It is my assumption that they are going to remove the tariffs.
Okay.
And once they remove the tariffs, that would allow those big businesses to import the goods, provided COVID is okay and people could clear things to the port. They're going to allow the big businesses to be able to import more goods from China at a cheaper price. Therefore, they would probably maintain the same price on their goods that they're selling now because people don't normally go down on their prices when their profit increases. You know, they're making more money because of the tariffs.
So right. So what? So basically, like the tariff. Let's say a shirt. A shirt normally costs $10. Just to make this in real numbers. The tariff makes it cost another $3. Now I gotta pass it on to the customer. Now the shirt costs $13. Right. If the tariff gets eliminated, I'm gonna still sell my shirt for $13.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Because people used to buying that shirt for $13.
That's dirty. That's dirty. That's dirty. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Nobody's gonna pay attention that the tariff went down, therefore your prices went down. Only thing you're gonna see is that you got more goods on the shelves.
Right. Okay. I didn't even know there was a tariff. I probably heard it somewhere, but I wasn't aware of it until just now, as you mentioned it. The other just so back to these two parts of the infrastructure bill. So this is going to definitely stimulate the job market in America. It can only serve to help or to benefit or to better the job market in the United States after it gets passed.
There's a lot of things that's going on behind the scenes. You got to look at what they're doing in the federal government as far as this COVID. What type of things they're implementing right now? They're making it for the federal government, right? They're making it mandatory that all federal employees
get vaccinated,
right? They're making sure that all military personnel get vaccinated, right?
Right.
So if you're a federal contractor and you do all these contracts on a military base, you got to make sure that your employees are vaccinated.
Yeah.
Right? So that's probably going to be a part of stipulation as far as being awarded a contract. You got to make sure that you are vaccinated. You got to make sure that your employees are vaccinated. So if you're a Black-owned business owner and you're not vaccinated and you don't think you want to get vaccinated, you're eliminating yourself from possibly getting a contract. Because you cannot go in these locations to do the work. You cannot get these federal dollars if you're not vaccinated. I mean, that's what they're using, right? That's what they're doing right now. In order to be eligible for these programs, you must be vaccinated. That's what people are talking about. In order for you to come inside this store, this restaurant, whatever have you, you must be vaccinated. That's the trend that's going right now. Even with the airlines, some airlines, in order to fly on airplanes, you must be vaccinated. So who's to say that they won't say, in order to get this federal contract, you must be vaccinated.
You got to be vaccinated. They very well could. I mean, if the federal government, if nobody's pushing everyone to have it, then that's probably the next step. That makes perfect logical sense.
That's the next step. So as a black-owned business owner, I'm not vaccinated. That eliminates me from even being a possible contractor.
Very few black people I talk to in the States, like all my family back home, they're all fully vaccinated.
But the numbers
are
still low. The numbers are still low.
Okay.
You got a lot of people getting affected. Everybody, a lot of people getting, but the numbers are still going up right now as far as who's catching COVID, whether the unvaccinated or vaccinated, but still the fact still remains. That's probably going to be one of the criteria to get these contracts on the federal level.
Vaccinated.
That's not to say that they won't do the same thing on the state level as well as on the local level.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I'm trying to draw out the question I have on my mind right now. These contracts, specifically regarding African American contractors, what do you see happening ultimately? Because there's certain obstacles in place, the vaccine, certain obstacles in place being that there's not too many black businesses that can handle such a project that's as massive as this one. What do you see happening with the wealth that these projects generate and how it affects black people?
But that's why they want to try to break it down. They want to try to break them down to small components where more blacks would be able to participate in contracts as contractors, instead of being just primarily the labor force.
Okay. Do you predict the government being successful at that? Being able to break down the whole house project, as you gave the analogy, the whole house into separate areas like the roof, the foundation, the plumbing, the electrical work. Do you see them being successful at being able to divide all that up?
You can put it on paper, but actually the implementation of that is going to be very difficult. I mean, you can have the people from the Wisconsin group who can file a lawsuit against it, right? Even though, they say they don't do it, right? They say they don't file a lawsuit against it, right? How many? It's like it's a timetable. You have so many years to complete these projects because the funding is only set for a certain amount of years.
Right.
If you're not able to, it's like the old thing: use it or lose it. You got your leave days. You can't carry it over to the next year. You got to use it now, or you lose it. So they can have something like, we have all these contracts set aside for black-owned businesses, but we don't have any black-owned businesses bidding on these contracts. So therefore, they lose the opportunity for these contracts. The money goes back into the big pot.
Okay.
And then those big pot with the big boys that they be able to do the contract. So it could be like that 30-day use it or lose it, 60-day use it or lose it, 90-day use it or lose it. So we don't use it, we don't bid on these things, we don't stand a chance of getting it. And on top of that, how many people, people been locked up, pretty much isolated. How many people actually have that experience to actually know how to bid on these contracts? It's not something that you can come out the box and do automatically. Who actually going to train you or give you the skills on how to bid on contracts and how to execute them? If you've never done it before. It's all about the training process. And they got money that's set aside for these type of training things. They like to call it a supply chain support. And that supply chain support, not understanding that supply chain support is getting that equipment and getting those supplies so people can actually do these projects. So instead of trying to be the subcontractor, be the primary contractor, some of us probably to focus on, I want to supply all the pipes. I want to supply all the electrical wiring. I want to supply all the windows. I want to supply, the different parts of that project. Let me just be the supplier and just deliver the goods. I don't have to do no labor, just deliver. But again, you come back over and say, who has direct access to those equipment? Direct access to those supplies? Where are those things acquired from? Do we go through the distributors or do we go directly to the manufacturing suppliers, perhaps in China? that can get us these
Mm-hmm.
goods. So it's a lot of different moving components, and how we figure out which part of these things we want to fit into is not being discussed in our community.
Okay. All right. So first, the dialogue has to be invented or created. And then after people talk about it, then you can put the plans into action.
Yeah, but the problem is, what if they say this Friday or next week they pass the bill? It
Mm-hmm.
becomes law.
A lot of people aren't prepared for it at all.
People, right? People are not prepared for it, and I don't know if they're preparing people for it. And if they are, how are they preparing people for it? And which group of people are they targeting to prepare them for it? I mean, does a
Not
local
black people.
right? Does a local government, like my small hometown, do they have like a liaison there who really doing the background work and saying, okay, this is what we need to prepare our small business owners to be prepared for the bid on these infrastructure projects? Are they doing that right now, even at the state level? Are they saying, okay, we need to have these programs set up to train these people to be prepared for the infrastructure law bill when it comes to law? Do we have those things in place? I don't know.
Nobody. That's such a actually radical way of thinking. Nobody's even thinking about making sure. I mean, because what I would imagine is that the people who do it already, those are the people who do it and know how to do it. They've been trained how to bid on contracts, and that's their area. And no one's even thinking that that's an avenue for wealth creation and job creation. Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's first getting that information out there to people that this new infrastructure bill it might have passed today. I'm not sure what it's doing, but this new infrastructure bill is an avenue towards job creation and an avenue towards securing more wealth, especially for Black people. But how to go about that needs to be training as far as how that whole process works. And securing the supply chain is also an important factor.
Yes.
In that avenue towards wealth and the supply you can get them from China. Is there any other than China? Would you consider just having your level of experience, all the places you've been before? Is it only China that can provide this need?
It's transferable. I mean, contract material and supplies is global. It's transferable. It all depends on which country you're in and what type of network you have established in that country to facilitate those type of transactions. It's not just China alone. I mean, it could be manufacturing suppliers in Canada or in Mexico. It could be in the UK. It could be for Brazil. You know, it's not all exclusive geared towards China. It's just basically being able to understand the process and be able to target those type of organizations that will help facilitate those trade opportunities for those small Black business owners to better position themselves to bid on these contracts. But do we have, I mean, that goes to another point. I mean, do we have any Black American Chamber of Commerce in other foreign countries to manage all these type of projects? I mean,
the project that you're talking about in its scope is massive. But since we're sitting here talking right now, where do you start? What's step number one?
Well, this is a good starting point right now.
And the conversation, because I don't have anywhere near your level of experience in business. So I'm keeping up in a way, but there's a lot that you're saying that's just flying over here. But I grasp the basic concept of what you're saying is for us to have people, first the training in the America with people on both sides who can create a supply chain that's useful, that's reliable. Yeah.
It starts here, and then from the listeners here, they continue that dialogue. I mean, we got to start the dialogue somewhere. I mean, you know, throw a rock in a water, next thing you know, it's a tidal wave. You know, you got to start somewhere. You got to start somewhere, and that's the missing component. These type of conversations are not coming from within the United States, not from within our community, because our community is not looking at focusing on doing international trade. And this is before COVID. This is not nothing that's new. I mean, COVID has an impact on it, but all of this is before COVID. I mean, you going back to I would say if you go as far back as 1978,
Mm-hmm.
and when I say 1978, that when Deng Xiaoping was the chairman of China,
Yeah.
and that's when they had the open door policy in 78.
Right.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's when China said, okay, we're going to do open to the global market, start doing trade, import, export, and everything. And a lot of companies came over and started making their imprint into China. But did Black America come over here and make their imprint in China? I don't know. No, they hadn't established an organization here to do that.
Not specifically as a Black organization, but probably as
Individual.
under the broader umbrella of America, where Americans coming over here doing X, Y, and Z. Part of the university, part of this company, and they might happen to have a brother or sister on their team. But specifically coming over as a Black American delegation, I would say certainly not, definitely no.
There have been delegations to come, but they just did the delegation type of thing, came to see, blah, blah, doing a dignitary thing, have dinner, see these type of companies establish and move forward. But to establish a physical presence in China, no, that hasn't happened. Even when 2001, which actually this is the 20th anniversary of China entering the WTO. It started in 2001.
Okay.
Here's 2021, so it's going to 20th anniversary. Just December will be 20 years. So I can imagine what type of conversation is going to happen in December when they talk about the 20 years of China's ascension into the World Trade Organization. That's when a lot of things changed. It started changing real rapidly. But yet again, where were we?
Right.
So it's
Okay.
that.
Got you. Okay. All right. We're going on about an hour right now, but yeah, I started the interview off a little bit incorrectly. And tell us, could you reiterate for us, please, one more time, your name, your background, and exactly what your expertise is in?
Well, my name is William D. Frazier. I'm known as the Black American entrepreneur in China, connecting industry and culture differences. My background it's a holistic background. It goes from urban planning, economic development, urban studies, as well as contract specialist. I'm presently in Shanghai, and I do a lot of content writing. I do a lot of import export. I work with companies doing manufacturing process and product sourcing. So I look at ways of trying to better engage Black America into developing a trade organization with China to better, position us for economic. Yeah.
Okay. All right. How necessary is that trade organization between Black Americans and the country China?
It's very necessary. I mean, if you look at
Crucial.
it's crucial. Even now more than ever. I mean, we're going to the 21st century. A lot of things is changing. The way people are going to work with automation, AI, robots, and all that. How things are going to be transcending for the next 50, 60 years. What impact are we going to have moving forward? I mean, COVID has shown me a lot of things. It has shown a lot of people a lot of things. But one particular thing it has shown to me is that in our community back in the States, we suffered from direct access of those PPE equipment when it first started happening. We didn't get direct access to the glove, the mask, the gowns. We kind of on at the end of
Okay.
the process of getting that stuff. Now, if we had an
Right.
organization over here to make sure that we have access to essential items, I mean, not just us, it was the country as a whole that did not have it. If the
Mm-hmm.
country as a whole didn't have it, just imagine where Black folks fit into that equation.
Right. Yeah.
So we need to have things outside the United States established to improve our economic situation within the United States. I truly believe that if we continue to rely within the United States to improve our economic situation, it's not going to happen. We got to go outside and use that mechanism.
Okay. All right. Bro, I agree with you 100%. That's exactly why you and I are both abroad,
Yeah.
checking out other options.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Amongst other
All right.
things.
All right. William, thank you very much for your time, man. I learned a lot. Yeah. Hopefully this is going to go up and be posted to Instagram so people can look at this conversation later on and get what they can get from it. And yeah, definitely insightful. Thank you for your insights.
Yeah, no problem. Like I said, can I do a shameless plug?
Go ahead, man. Yeah, you good. Go ahead. Go on with it.
Yeah, this is my book that I've written about my first. This is my first book I've written about my experiences here. It's an overview of my understanding of doing business with China and doing business in China. It's a big difference, you know, between the two. And that's my Black American Entrepreneur in China. Is available on Amazon. And I'm available. You want to reach out to me, you can find me here on Instagram or on Twitter or on Facebook, like that. But anyway, that's me. Thank you.
William_D_Frazier, Frazier.
IER, yes.
Yeah. All right, cool. People will definitely check you out. Excellent resource to have on this side of the world.
We got to make it happen, man. It's crucial.
Right.
Again, when they pass the infrastructure bill and when they, what is the title, please? Okay.
Which one? What title?
That's what's the, hold it up again. Black American Entrepreneur in China.
In China, okay.
Black American Entrepreneur in China, connecting industry and cultural differences.
Mm-hmm.
I have to type it in, I guess. But
okay.
Once they pass that infrastructure bill, I'm almost sure they're going to reduce those tariffs. I'm almost sure they're going to reduce those tariffs, and when they do that, we're going to be in trouble.
Be in trouble? Why? Because the prices for importers will go down, but they're going to still keep the same prices and pass those to the consumer.
Not only
is that right?
It's just that we're not part of that supply chain to bid on this contract.
Okay, right, okay, yeah, okay, gotcha.
We're not part of that supply chain.
Gotcha.
And that's going to weaken our position.
Okay.
We got to be part of that supply chain. If we can't get the contract, at least be part of the supply chain.
How long do we have before those tariffs are lifted?
It could happen at any time.
Okay.
But you got to remember, even the prime contractors or the subcontractors, they have suppliers.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you may not be the prime or subcontractor, but they still need suppliers. You can find a way to get involved with this. If I can't be the contractor, then I'll be the supplier.
Okay.
And that's one thing we got to look at, being a supplier. You know, if we got to get all areas, and we just can't concentrate in one area. We got to got different holistic view about this whole thing.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, William.
Thank you.
Not a problem. All right. Let's end this live right here. Have a good night.
Peace. Y'all
Black Agent Magazine. Peace.